Hi, everybody. I'm the Somatid Man. And what we're going to talk about today is the rock and roll industry. I'm going to start with the 50s. The 50s was the beginning. Now, at that point, just starting and doing what we were doing, we basically really weren't getting into anything of heavy information or whatever. And, well, how can I say? We started with Buddy Holly and various other 50s bands. I can talk about more. Little Richard, Fats Domino. Like I said, doesn't really matter. It was all for fun. All the kids were having a great time. It was fantastic. Of course, I was born in 1950 on Flag Day, so I guess I really didn't see much of that. If you hold on, I'm having a little trouble focusing. And I thought I could do it because I forgot my glasses. Being an epileptic, by now you should know. Anyway, hey, how about that? So anyway, you had all these old fun bands. That's all they were. It's lots and lots of fun. That's all it was. Simple, innocent. Except, of course, some of the lyrics. Today would be kids in kindergarten. Well, maybe not that low, but my point is that the songs, the lyrics, I can mention more. The Big Bopper, I'm trying to think of more, but basically I think that'll do. Okay, all kidding aside. I think 5 is enough. It gives you an idea. And as time grew on, they had more and more bands coming out. You're getting to these bands where they're all fun. They're all about the prom and all this other stuff, you know. And basically, Tell Mary I Love Her. There's one for you. Ricky Nelson, Garden Party, all kinds of different things. Hello, Mary Lou, Traveling Man. You had many of these groups coming out. And as time wore on, some of the songs became serious. Phil Oakes comes to mind. Harry Chapin. And now this is an evolution. Don't think that automatically these people showed up. I'm just trying to explain where they came from and when. And then, continuing on, of course, Bob Dylan and various other people. And they talked about things that actually had some importance. They talked about the war. Oh, by the way, that's what I forgot. All about the war. No, I'll get there. So basically, they're talking about the war and being free and take care of the soldiers and all these things. I'm Not Marching Anymore was won by Phil Oakes, if I can remember. He did a lot of other songs. Harry Chapin did. A lot of these folk singer rock bands, they did things and they started to make people at least aware of what was happening. And you had the Beatles, who came out as a distraction at another level of creating another form of music. And they basically, as I think, looking back, they were another level of distraction and the control of the rock industry. Now, you're talking about now an industry that started in the 50s. No, I didn't elaborate on that. I really didn't want to. I said so many things. It's absolutely ridiculous. But to go on, because this is more important, the Beatles came out and the music changed. And they basically were out there and singing their songs, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and all these different things, and evolving as it continued, talking about loving each other and all this other baloney as time wore on. Now, that wasn't automatically right away. That was within a 10-year span till they got All You Need Is Love. The early stuff, of course, is like Help and various songs that were basically kind of love songs until they hit a certain point. And like I said, they started to awaken. Then they became awoke, I guess. And they came out with their Love, Dove, Peace albums and talking all about this, having interviews. And in the meanwhile, you've got other bands coming out like the Zombies, the Searchers, and so on. You go and you can continue on, and you see all these bands coming out, and they're following the Beatles' footsteps, obviously. But all these different bands are coming out, and they're another step, I guess you can say. And they start talking about it. All these different bands, some of them were earlier, like the Moody Blues and such, Rolling Stones and various other bands, the early Yardbirds, Kinks. I can keep going. There are a lot of rock bands, all right? And they grew, and then they started to talk about love and peace. But in reality, what it did is continue to all these different groups. All of them. All the women as well. You've got all kinds of different singers that are coming out and doing their particular music that was set up for them, because don't kid yourself, a lot of them didn't write their own music. They did what the industry told them to do in the label they were under. They wanted a lot of commercial crap, and they got it. And not just from the women, but the men as well. Think of Herman's Hermits. I mean, come on. You've got all these old bands. There even was a band called Freddie and the Dreamers. And they did a song called I'm Telling You Now. Now that'll tell you why some of the bands basically did their stuff and disappeared so quickly. But the ones that stuck around, like your Moody Blues and your Yes and your Pink Floyd and your Jethro Tull. By the way, at 15, my brother took me on his motorcycle to a place called the Electric Theater in Chicago. I guess that's where I got my first real taste for cannabis. Isn't that funny? An epileptic, I have to take it before, if I got caught, my mother or whoever would give me one hell of a hard time. Anyway, until they gave up and said he isn't going to stop, and he's already out of high school. Anyway, my point is, I saw Canned Heat, Jethro Tull, and Led Zeppelin on the same stage, and it looked like a little basement. I was sitting so close and watching them from 5 or 10 feet away. I kid you not. That was my first taste. Of course, I was 15. It was a remarkable experience. I was already playing drums and singing and such. But later on, I started playing with all the bands. And we did some of our own, and we did some commercial stuff and such. And then I went off on my own. If anybody's gone to YouTube, Illusion of Religion, and my name, they'll see me with my glasses on and my Indiana Jones hat on, I believe. And you can click there and it'll take you to an area where it's highlighted. Click across. You see a round circle that's green with an M in it. Click on that, it'll take you into my channel. Anyway, these bands started to talk about things, some spiritual, some very satanic. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You also had Queen, which was later on in the early 80s, if I remember. But there are all kinds of bands. The Who, as I said, I'm sure I said it, Pink Floyd. And you had Deep Purple, and you had Uriah Heep in Kansas. And you had all kinds of different bands coming out and talking in conscious ways and talking about giving love. Meanwhile, the kids, that includes me, were being programmed into believing all the bull crap. They kept us distracted about the war, except we were smart enough to do protests. Again, I'll tell you this, I've said for a long time. The Illuminati do not care. You want to protest? Make it in the millions, or it won't mean a damn thing, all right? I say that in my own sarcasm, but truth. So here we are, and we're hopping through all these heavy-duty bands, boy. Unbelievable bands. And they're all singing about love and giving and caring. And it continues on. And it continues on with every band, even if they're loving and good. Lindisfarne was another one where they did Lady Eleanor, which was really satanic about vampires. They were very good, though. But again, they talked about spirituality and such. All these bands I'm talking about all did their share. They all created this illusion that they really gave a damn. All right? Well, we've had major problems in this world. But do you really think the Illuminati are going to allow anything to change what's happening and getting worse? Look at all the rock stars that talked about love and peace and giving and that and this and that, and they gave nothing. These are the people that we worshipped. We worshipped these jerks, these liars, these phonies, these hypocrites. It's unbelievable that we got conned this way. But it made it sure a hell a lot easier to have the war, where people were dying. I can't even say by how many exactly. I don't have those totals. Meanwhile, we're listening to Grateful Dead and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and they're not in order, of course not. But I'm just trying to point out all these so-called conscious bands. All these different conscious bands. The Byrds. Along with the Byrds, you had the Yardbirds. I think I mentioned Deep Purple. They were very spiritual. They had one piece called Sweet Child in Time, if I've got that correctly. It'll take you there either way. But Deep Purple, as I said before, Uriah Heep, many different bands. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You've got all these different bands, and they're all singing these wonderful things about love and giving. Yet, nothing was given. And we still worship them. The Guru and the Beatles. The Beatles started the whole crap. Without the Beatles, the Guru doesn't get here and do what he's supposed to do. None of this is an accident, all right? That Guru, all of them, they're all fake. But don't feel bad. Every religions have the fake bull crap. The holy men. Holy shit. If these are your holy men, you're in deep trouble. But again, the rock industry pushed that. And notice I'm saying rock industry because they're making billions of dollars, along with selling you an image and making you think you care and do anything, when even your rock stars that you worshiped did nothing and you were never aware of it, either because of that half an education again, or just maybe we didn't give a damn. I go by the fact that we were brainwashed and didn't give a damn. We just cared and talked a good story. So as we continued, more rock bands were created. You've got, I'm trying to think of a couple of different bands that were created. Thinking of who it was by, but there were a couple other bands that were created. Badfinger was one of them, and then along with Badfinger, you had, I'm trying to remember, they did Itchy Coo Park and a few others, very good. You'll have to forgive me, my mind's a little bit spacey today. But it gives you an idea, again, more and more bands singing about consciousness, singing about love, singing about giving, making everybody happy. Borscht. Sing all you want. It's what actions are. Actions create change. If your actions are pure, then what will happen is you'll create something that's pure. But if you're going to lie and make how many millions of dollars that you make, and you never hear anybody really giving anything away in the entertainment industry, but in the rock industry, come on. Later on, they're put in the Musical Hall of Fame. But I never heard them put in there because they helped the hungry and the homeless. So there's another lie right in front of you. That they talk about love and giving people freedom and all this other bull crap and living a good life and all these different things. that were supposed to happen and were important. But you notice they never pitched in. They sang a lot of good music, but they never pitched in. And now, let's go a little further. Let's go through all the bands that went through after that. All the different types of music. They didn't fit in anymore. They didn't talk about every problem. Don't get me wrong, the people that did talk about it made billions of dollars. Look at Paul McCartney. How much money did he make, and how much did you hear him make any changes? He told everybody at this point, day and time, we need to meditate. Oh, he's full of crap. I don't notice him giving some of his $1 billion away to help get the people off the streets. Because all bands love, all right, being a little silly on purpose. All the bands bullshit about love. I inverted that on purpose. I wanted you to understand that nothing's been done. They talk a good story. Now, it doesn't matter what crap that's out there now as far as I'm concerned. I still don't hear any of them giving. Oh, maybe at Christmas, or maybe $1 million here once in a while. Get together and do a benefit, give the money away for cancer, which are all good things, don't get me wrong. As I said before, I don't believe we should have as many sicknesses as we have. I think some are created by your great, I guess you call them either the Illuminati or your great alien overlords. All entertainment's a distraction, so you do what they have you do and make believe that this is something you get and enjoy because it's your days off of slavery. And there, the rock stars are making more money, and their music, as far as I'm concerned, is atrocious. But I came from 1950s into the 60s and so on, being born in 1950. And the bottom line is, all of them, one decade after another, and the more people grow outside to starve or to die because they have no place to go. But I keep seeing those decades and decades. I don't even know what to call them musically, don't get me wrong. I just don't have that desire. But don't feel bad, I don't have a desire to use the computer. I think it's garbage. I don't go to social media because I think it's baloney, and they conned you and made you programmed into thinking it's actually something as a bonus. It's been an eyesore. It's caused problems. Hell on wheels. All of them. Then you got Elon Musk, who's another real bargain. I could talk about Bill Gates owning so much land. You go check it out. You'll find out where. So all these different things through the decades have been created for each group of children. What we have now is, I don't even know what to call it. But this is what we have, and this is what they're bringing the kids up with. What's next? I have no idea. Maybe you're going to hear a bunch of chains rattle and people yelling and screaming and telling you to kiss off. Anyway, even I thought that was funny. If you didn't like it, tough. My point is that all of this garbage has been part of a really grand plan. While they still make billions, and by now trillions long back, it's a plan. It really is. From the 50s all the way to the present of 2024. The plan has been slowly put together for the decades, because each decade the music slowly changes into something else. By design. They want that. They want each group to have their own particular music. Well, actually, it's not just that. It's also to program them into listening and hearing what they say. I've heard some stuff that's so vile and disgusting, it even talks about killing. Not just war, but actually going out and killing somebody. That's unbelievable. Children hear this crap. But decade after decade, the music and the bands have changed, and the kids are learning whatever they want them to learn. They are even learning about hate. And they're making it sound like a normalcy. Hate. How did you learn to hate? Well, I think it's programming. And with a half-ass education, no matter if a PhD or not, pal, we don't notice that we're hating each other. Believe it or not, the rock industry is helping that as well. Now, I'm not talking about people my age or a bit younger. I'm talking about what they're doing to the kids now. And it's slowly evolved into that. Now you've also got a lot of satanic music on. Ain't that a blather? Not that I believe in the devil. The Illuminati are your devil. Where they came from, I don't know. Orion? Or is Orion a good group? Draconia? What? I don't care who they are. If they're evil and they're vile, it would explain the evolution that we've gone through to make us more and more, and man can be more and more programmed. We're learning more hate, we're learning more technology, we're learning about AIs, we're learning all of this baloney. As I told you long ago, the first AI was the computer. Look it up if you don't believe me. Let me move up just a little. All right, if you don't believe me, look it up. See what the first AI was, and it will tell you the computer. Because it had a language and it could talk to somebody electronically. There should have been a clue for us, but we weren't bright enough. Again, I say we've had half-an-ass education. That's my belief. But let's get back to it now. We're now at this point of, I don't want to call it rock and roll anymore, musical entertainment, all right? And I don't know where it's going, but I definitely know that it's heading more technologically. I wrote a piece called 5 Cents Reality 23 years ago. And it went, just so you can remember the lyrics: 5 cents, 5 cents, 5 cents reality. 5 cents, 5 cents reality. 5 cents, 5 cents reality. The half-breeds were made, man is born. Now this is after the cave beings. The gods made men in their image to work in the mines and toil in the fields. The gods made man in their image. We are slaves. Time has passed and their agenda continues. Technology is their brand new game to enslave us deeper into the confusion. You're living in a dream in 5 cents illusion. Now at this point, technology is no longer a brand new game. But that's how long ago I knew the technology. I just finished writing a piece of music called The Garbage of Eden. And what it is musically is going to be, I tried to figure out a way to mix them because, you know, I do dimensional music if you go to my channel. And basically, it's about the Garden of Eden being called the Garbage of Eden, which you'll get in a moment. I wanted it to start with heaven above the earth. Because, of course, the bullshit that heaven is above and the earth is below bullshit doesn't matter. One's massive, one isn't. But they call it space, so you count the numbers. That's another piece. But my point is, so you're there. You're in heaven. And then you flow and fall down to earth to go to the garden. But it turns out to be the garbage of Eden. Because it's all about human AIs. First you'll see factories and you'll see them creating human AIs. Now there goes the idea of making them with each other. Because the ultimate thing is to be able to create what they want, but I believe they want to keep creating us. What they don't want is for us to think. So that'll dissipate. It could be a synthetic thing in a shot. Could be anything, okay? But the sooner they turn you into that, yes, master, whatever you say, master, kiss my ass, master, that's what we have to wake up to. And the rock industry is pushing technology. And not good technology. And some of the music these kids, or whatever you want to call them, ghouls, sing or sing about is just vile and disgusting. Rape, you name it, incest, they sing it, they talk about it. Who knows where it's going to keep heading? Unless we start becoming aware what our kids are actually watching and thinking is a star and that they're worshiping, we got big trouble. We got it now. I shouldn't even say we got. We have had trouble for a long, long time, but we as adults didn't even notice. And it wasn't until a bit ago that I started to see the whole game being put together from the 50s on. I didn't go extensively on the 50s or 60s. I just went to a certain point to make you understand. One was fun and games to evolve to the war and the band singing to keep the kids preoccupied while they were killing people on the other side of the world. They even made up songs protesting the war in Vietnam. Big friggin' ass deal. Again, it only made more money, and they got done what they had to get done for that decade. Then they moved on to the next one. And they had all this money they were making on all the bands. But they had a certain time that they wanted it to end and go to the next level of music. You can tell by listening to it. And then when that was over, just like the caveman, they went to the next level. The music didn't become extinct by any matter. They made more money. Parents showing their kids some of the Beatles and showing them the movies and showing all the other bands live and all this stuff. Led Zeppelin, which is really good. Buying a Stairway to Heaven was all about. Wasn't heaven. Anyway, my point is there were a lot. And now it's grown to this. Now, unless the parents, again, get involved, like I told them to get involved on the cable and all the TV channels that these kids are watching about hate and war and all this sci-fi crap that they're slowly coming out with. And the reason they did it in the first place, we didn't know. We didn't realize that it was just not just entertainment. It was a mind-controlling thing and make you numb to the fact of changes were fine. And the more sci-fi it was, the more you really wanted to experience and all this bull crap. I was no different. They programmed me. But after a while, here came the 10 years of LSD, and the man awoken and found out the truth about his screwed up planet. All right. So my point is, the music industry is a big part of this plan. All the entertainment is a big part of this plan. The movies are going to get more AI-ish push. The music's going to be pushed more and more AI-ish or oh gosh-ish. Sports, they're doing whatever they can to destroy it and have children watch it. Who knows what the next step will be? Baseball's ridiculous. Basketball used to be a game without just threes. They shot threes because they had no choice, or they had to do something to make up for a score they didn't get and keep with the other team so they could either make it and win it or take it into overtime. Just like my Bulls did against Minnesota, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, if I believe, coming back from 23 points. Now there you're stuck. You got to shoot a few threes. But old-style basketball, if you go watch Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and so on, in that era, you will find basketball was a game of moving the ball and passing to each other and trying to get into the paint. But, well, anyway, I just wanted to tell you that. Like everything else, they're changing things. The more they can connect the kids to, they could give two you-know-whats if the adults were available anymore. We've done our time, and we've watched all the decades go by as the music kept changing. But the 50s started the ball rolling with just everyday happy music. I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. Little Richard. You had all kinds of different 50s musicians. And they were just there so you can have fun, but it introduced you to the next level of when the war was coming. Now, that war was no accident. They can hide, sweetheart, my little girl's here. It was no accident. They had this set up so the 50s could get you all interested into rock, and then came the Beatles and the war. And there they are. Millions of kids jumping into the music and talking about the war, and all the bands talking about the war as time went on. Not early. I mean, like the Zombies, Tell Her No, and the Searchers, Needles and Pins. Nice songs, but they really didn't say much about the war. But neither did the Beatles. None of them did. The Beatles were basically, let's move her out of the way. Thank you. The Beatles and all these bands, they were that key to get the ball rolling, to get the war rolling, to get the kids more involved in music than what's happening around the world. And glad they didn't have a high draft number, if I remember correctly. If not, I apologize. But the point is, the music was created in fun, and all of a sudden it changed in the 60s. And the 70s changed as again, and the 80s. All these things kept happening. But the 90s were really when it started to really start to not change, but go to an end. And then came up that next decade, and oh boy, things changed a bit. Now, you had some old rock bands that still did some things. Not quite like Paul McCartney 80 or Mick Jagger looking already like a skeleton. All these old bands coming out there, these old fat, bald-headed or gray-haired men singing songs that they should have stopped. I told my wife if I had made it in the industry, I'd have left if I had enough money at 35, 40. And the reason I would have left is because I wanted to be remembered as who I was, young and fit the industry. Last few years, if you've noticed, they've brought all these old fart bands back. I always laugh because I think it's ridiculous. You've got so many old farts. I don't even want to name all the bands. They just make me laugh. But like I told my wife, I would have liked to go out the way I was at 35. 40 at the latest. If I had enough money, I probably would have left at 35. I wouldn't have wanted to be noticed, one, at this age, and two, going into that age where you no longer look like a young rock and roller. You look like a guy that just can't hang him up, and they're starting to lose their hair and all kinds of different craps happening. Some of them are getting big as houses like Meatloaf, all these other bands. Well, you're getting to an age, pal, where you don't belong out there. I watched some of these young bands like the Hollies, and they were another good band. Buffalo Springfield, all these different bands. And I watched them, and I saw them in their tight pants, but their little legs and their little bodies. Go watch early Zombies or the Searchers or early any of them. Look at Moody Blues, skinny little SOBs, but the son of the Bucks aren't that skinny or even alive. So all of this nonsense went on, and now it's going on and continuing to use technology to play with the children throughout the world. All the entertainment, all of it, mind control. Having you believe, one, that you're having some fun with time off. What's that, for good behavior? You're slaves. Face reality. And your kids are learning one decade after another more bullshit music that really has so many vile, evil, disgusting things to say in it. Oh, by the way, this commercial I really love. This idiot talks about stealing something from the airport. He's watching, I can't think, G something, and the game's going on and playing a second or 5 seconds or a minute later. So he's getting them later while the game is actually gone past that point. So that's where he talks about stealing these headphones that knock out all sound. But talks about it and says, I stole them from the airport. Good to show the kids that stealing is just okay because it's on TV. It's got to be okay. Just like the alcohol commercials. They're okay. If you see your mom and dad having a party and everybody's drinking, watching Big Bang where all she did, this Penny, is drink, and they drank quite a bit, which showed it was quite all right for a young child to watch Big Bang. Oh, don't think they were the only ones. They weren't. A lot of bad habits and things were taught on TV. But the alcohol one was the best. And all the commercials now for fun and games and alcohol, especially athletes or retired athletes. You're not getting somewhere if you're not getting Benny's alcohol and booze. It's not worth buying. That's the commercial you show during a ball game, sporting event or whatever. So all of these different things are happening. What's the next step? As I told you, is what I believe was AI land. I'm going to think it's going to get more intense, and whatever they use, don't get me wrong, I'm not a swami or a guru, thank goodness. My point I'm trying to make is I don't know exactly the game until I start seeing it materialize. But this I've known for a while. That over the decades, entertainment field has changed, the rock and roll industry. At a certain point a while ago, we should have stopped calling it rock and roll industry. It was being reduced quite a bit. And as time wore on, it no longer was rock and roll. At least not like I think rock and roll was like. And should have been understood that they were phony. They didn't do anything for anybody. They just made money and sang a good story. So that's your rock and roll industry starting in the 50s. Now in the 50s, they didn't make that kind of money. Same thing applies once they hit the 60s, and is when they started to get managers like Brian Epstein and the Beatles and the other ones that he also took. I don't know how many he had, 9, 10, maybe I'm wrong. A lot of the bands. You could always tell, though, they were all dressed in the same suits, and at the end they bowed over and then came back up and waved to the crowd, and off they went. But you can always tell the ones that Epstein was managing. Now, all this stuff happened, and slowly but surely, and I don't buy the fact that they didn't already see the Beatles before that, and that Epstein wasn't one of the Illuminists. I do believe he was. and he saw him or he heard from somebody to go look at him and see if they fit the mold on distracting all the kids. You think they didn't have that idea before that? When they found the right group, they took them. They had to look a certain way, though. Don't kid yourself in a million years. They had to have talent, but they also had to have a certain look so they could promote it. I went out, bought the Beatle boots. I still own them. I play drums with them. They don't look like new. Then again, so many years ago in the 60s that I bought those. But my point to you is, again, I'm trying to emphasize this, that your rock and roll industry was a distraction. It changed every decade. Things got different, and the kids start learning differently. Now we're at this point where they've gotten to the point of technology where they'll accept AI. And that's what they want. And that's what I believe is going to go through this decade, because they want to be completed by 2030 and own this planet. But that's how we've gotten here, all the way from the 50s to the current 2024. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. Technology is basically taking over the world. We can't even get away from having to use our phone when we're in the car or walking and notice nothing when we're talking, that we could get hit by a car or whatever. Or you could hit a lamp post or something because you're talking out on the phone and you have to bend down for a second like an idiot. Now that's just a picture right there, talking on your phones every 30 seconds. All this other technology is being brought out. And this is just baby technology compared to what they want to bring in. But without your rock and roll industry, none of this can be accomplished. You don't believe me? Think about it. Think about the fact, without the rock and roll industry, they wouldn't have been able to continue to evolve the children into believing that's their own particular music, and the older people just can't understand. Sound familiar, our old people, about our parents and the Beatles? They didn't like the Beatles. They didn't like Elvis either. They wouldn't let him on Ed Sullivan showing his pants because they thought the wiggle and everything was just too disgusting to show. There were a few of them. The way they shook their hips and sang while they played guitar and all this stuff. And that was the way it was back then, in the 50s. Then in the 60s, boy, they wanted to make sure any band that shook their hips or whatever were not able to be seen. It was only after a little while that they decided that people were overreacting, and they realized they probably were told to do it, but I didn't think, as they were putting it, give a damn. Don't buy that for a minute. This was all set up as well to get us going and continuing on to create a stronger and stronger rock and roll industry. But let's go back to this last bit of time and realize that it's been an evolution. We need to take a real good look at it and see where you feel it's heading, and tell people, educate people, let them understand the rock industry was fake. Oh, it's great music. Everything was said nice. I love you. You love me. Ha, ha, ha. I'm keeping my money. So, what's next? I don't know. But boy, better get a good grasp if they're thinking by 2030 they're going to be done. It's 2024, folks. That doesn't leave us many more years left, does it? Just a walk around the block for the alien overlords. What else can I say? We either get a grasp, understand how the music industry has continued to evolve from the 50s on, why it was set up that way, why they're at this point with the kids. They're going to be easier to play with all this technology to get them to 2030. That's their date, not mine. And I don't know what else to tell you. Hopefully I made sense and didn't sound like a babbling idiot. But I'll find out. I hope I made a point. I wasn't trying to say what band's better or not, or what decade's better. I'm saying it was an evolution to get to this point. Take it from the 50s all the way to 2024. Think of that. 50 years and another 20. 74 years. And they've made trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions, and so many that I don't know what's after trillion, off the kids. And they continued on by design their program to get each decade at a time. Good luck. Take care. Hopefully I made sense to you. But hopefully this will make something and make a difference.